Hello TikTokers, I'm Black Bright News and aka Dark Shades, and I seem to be doing these more frequently and more than what I expected to really. And it's mainly because some of the responses I'm getting, and I'm thinking, my goodness, how can I advise on that? Not that anyone's asking me for my advice, I can only just give information and use my wisdom to respond. The one I wanted to respond to was about a lady. She met a pastor and he just literally exploited her, took everything she had, and it was a horrible experience for her, and it took her 2 years to get out of it. How do you trust a pastor? You know, most people when they go to church, the least person that they are thinking that they shouldn't trust is the pastor. They might be skeptical about members of the congregation, even the usher. You know, they might say, "Oh, are they putting the money? Are they stealing out of the what do you call it? Out of the collection plate?" You know, people might have these kind of doubts, but when it comes to the pastor, for some reason, the pastor is untouchable. The pastor is that person who you have the most highest regard for. You tend to believe everything that they say, and you just go along with the sermon. And you avoid any form of, not necessarily flirtatiousness, because they're very, very clever, but you you don't take much notice when they're condemning behaviour, when they are being supercilious, when they are talking about money every minute, when they don't mention their wives or their families. People don't seem to look at pastors in the same way that they look at other people. And because they don't do that, because they don't use their discernment on pastors, I mean, when you're using your discernment, there's nobody who's exempt. The pastor is not exempt from you using discernment. I've been to many churches, and because I haven't felt that spirit, I just leave. Well, I don't leave straight away. I listen to the sermon, and if I don't feel it, I don't go back. And I remember one pastor said, "Oh, you date the church because you don't hang around." It's not that I don't hang around, but sometimes there's a spirit in these churches that makes me feel uncomfortable, so I don't go. I'm not saying that about all churches, but I'm just saying that there's sometimes when you go to church, yes, there are some situations where you have to learn to overcome, you have to learn to accept, it's all a part of growth, and you continue on your merry journey. But when it comes to pastors, it's really important not to place them on a pedestal, not to see them as not being human. Pastors are human like anyone else. They're prone to human frailties. They're prone to infidelity. They're prone to greed. They're prone to excess. And just because they're pastors doesn't mean that they're exempt from all of that. So when you're going into a church, or when a pastor, if the pastor is single and he's out to get you, you have to, number one, you're asking yourself, now, is he married? If he's not married and he's a pastor, why isn't he married? And sometimes, especially the new pastors, you don't want to judge people because of their past, because you've got a lot of pastors who openly admit what they've done. If they've been in jail, if they've been on drugs, if they're a recovering alcoholic, whatever it is, they openly declare it. And now they've given themselves to God. And now they are available. Now, you as a Christian woman will probably think, well, these are the best people. But sometimes they're not. Not because of their past, but sometimes there's something in people's nature that you have to look at first. So you're not judging that person on their past, you're judging that person on their current character. You're listening to the word. You're listening to how they express themselves. You're listening to how they interpret the Bible. You're listening to see whether or not what they say accords with your values and your beliefs and your understanding. You're looking for cooperation. You're looking for a pastor who is willing to interact with his congregation, not one who just dictates and tells you what to do and passes judgment and criticize. A lot of these pastors criticize their congregation, criticize them on what they're wearing, criticizes them on what they're doing. Who are they to pass judgment? They're not to pass judgment. And if they are not genuine, but if they are evolved Christians, they should know better than to pass judgment and condemn people on their lifestyle. We're all wayward. We're all sinners. So no one is better than the other. We're all the same in the eyes of the Father. So when you are looking for a pastor in a church, I mean, if you've been going to them for years, it's totally different. You know them. But sometimes when people go to new churches, and you have a new pastor, just check out that pastor before you get involved. When people are single, there could be a number of reasons why they're single, and normally it's because they've made poor choices in their past. That could be poor choices in relationships, it could be poor choices in habits, it could be a number of things. But it's about, I'm always saying, asking questions, investigating, not just taking somebody on because they say they're a Christian. Christian is such an easy word to say. Born again Christian is an easy word to say. Somebody said born again Christians are the worst. I'm not here to judge who's worse or who's better. Sometimes you could say the older and traditional Christians, they're much more judgmental, much more critical than the born-again Christians. Some people say the born-again Christians are more self-righteous. People are criticizing, judging, instead of looking at their own heart and what they can do to improve the way they think. It's not for anyone to say who is good and who is bad. What we need to do as individuals or as Christians, we need to look for the good in people and we need to protect ourselves from the bad. So there are a lot of people out there whose behavior isn't conducive to your well-being, and that's what you need to protect yourself from. And you can do that without judgment. You can do that just based on your choices and your decisions. You choose not to associate with that person. You don't have to condemn them. You don't have to judge with them. But they're not on the same page as you. So, I think I'm going to stop it there. Did I have anything else to say? Pastors, how do you know you trust them? What is their sermon about? Are they condemnatory? Are they judgmental? Anybody who's judgmental in the church, just be wary. Is there a glint in their eye? Because the thing is, when I say that, it's because, yes, in the Bible, God will condemn. God will judge. But that's his place, not yours. And when he says he will not tolerate, and, he's going to inflict his anger because of the satanic ways that people are behaving, that's for him to do. That's not for you to do. So you don't take over that role just because you're a pastor or just because you're in the church. Do they acknowledge spouse or family? I've already said that. And also, sometimes it's the female's role in it as well. How eager is she? Is she eager for free guidance? Does she feel as though by having a pastor, she's going to have it made? She's going to have the most perfect man? You're not. Those pastors, they're not perfect. They're not God. You might think they are. You might think they're the next thing to God, but they are far from God a lot of the times because they are human. Are you coveting someone else's husband? A lot of these women, they'll go into the church and they covet someone's husband who's a pastor. Judgment is mine, saith the Lord. So pastors are human, they're weak, they're easily tempered, and some of them abuse